Loaded out.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hey everyone, welcome in to Daily Wolves, and it is of course crossover before the big game this weekend. So I am not alone today. It's not a monologue. We've got a full house pretty much. With me in the home dugout is Nathan, as always, from Daily Wolves. Hey Nath.
Hi Chris. Hi everyone. Welcome in Joe and Finn.
Yeah,
it's good to have a full house.
Indeed. So yeah, we're welcoming into Molyneux this weekend, Crystal Palace, and so we have Joe and Finn from Daily Palace podcast. How are you doing, guys? Joe, I'll start with you just to make it less confusing. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Very good, thanks. Yet to be trick-or-treated, I've just said before. But nice to be on the podcast with another team united in antipathy for Jamie Vardy after his celebration housery of the two clubs. So, yeah, nice to be here.
Yeah, I feel it. And how about you, Finn?
I'm all good. It just made me realise, because obviously, it's Halloween, and I thought of all like the stadiums in the Premier League, I think Wolves' stadium is probably the best for Halloween, in a sense. I always remember you guys have like the pyrotechnics, which always makes you go, "Ooh!"
Yeah.
So I would say of all the stadiums, I'm sure there's probably a joke in there somewhere about maybe another team or something, but I can't think of it sharply enough. So
yeah, well, we'll take the win on that one then. So we're the best team in the Prem for Halloween. I think that.
Yeah, I mean we have
for us at this stage in the season. We'll take 3 points on that one, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, South London's scary, but for other reasons.
Yeah. I mean, we are Wolf Town. We are officially, like, people just walk around calling us Wolf Town. We are the home of Wolves. So, yeah, it's all good that we fit the Halloween vibe totally. Wow. Okay, yeah. So, loads to get through in the time that we have with us all in the dugout. So, if I start on hosting duties, saying, obviously, welcome in, guys. And first and foremost, how are you guys finding your own podcast? How's the Daily Crystal Palace podcast going?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. No, yeah, it's been really good. I mean, obviously, Palace's season has been quite difficult so far. So, but luckily, sort of this week seems to have been like, I feel like every team has their turning point in the season, and I feel like this has been ours this week. So it's quite nice. I think we've been saying on the pod quite a lot that it's like, and I've sort of picked this up a little bit with Wolves as well. Actually, from all the games that I've seen with Wolves, where it's like there's definitely quality in the squads, but it's almost like it's close to being like really, really good, but just like slightly short, and just silly little errors and mistakes that have just been quite costly, I feel, for both teams. But because I was even just looking now at the Wolves squad, and it's like some really good players in that team, and be interesting, I think, when they come up against each other on Saturday, how the teams line up. But yeah, in terms of the pod, yeah, we're having a great time. Just apart from Wale, who's actually a Liverpool fan and is having to, and Joe as well, Joe, I'm sure he'll explain in a sec, who's an Oxford fan, and they're having to pain their way through this season so far with Palace, but they've been excellent additions to the team and provide some really amazing insights. So.
That's random. And yeah, Joe, how are you finding the season so far?
I find the season so far to be draining, I would say, but it's picked up so far this year. As Finn says, with Palace, the metaphor I've been using is the old one of it had felt, so until last weekend, like boiling a frog by just turning the temperature up slowly, so it doesn't hop out the pot. Because it's every game you go, it's fine. A few things haven't really clicked. You can still see the plan and the quality, but that just kept on replicating itself week after week until found themselves 8 games in without a win. But then, of course, last weekend, the Palace of the back end of last season, at least temporarily, made a return and beat Spurs deservedly 1-0. I think could have been a bigger margin. And just yesterday, doubled down on that with a 2-1 victory over Villa in the Cup. So it's all coming up Palace just now. But yeah, we'll see.
Nathan, is it just me, or does it feel like typical Wolves that because like you guys have had a bad run of form and now coming into potentially a good moment, and Wolves are going to play you at a time when we really that's not that's anything that we need.
It does feel typical, and to be honest, just hearing Finn and Joe talk about their experience just makes me feel very jealous at this moment in time. They've had a great week. We're waiting on a great week. We've tried to make a great week out of a draw, so I think that kind of explains where we're at. But yeah, it's good to hear that you guys are having a fun time, and I hope your great week doesn't continue on into the weekend for Wolves' sake.
Yeah, I hope so too. It was interesting hearing you say, I think it was Finn, about, when you look at our team sheet, for example, that there's good players in there. I've been saying it. I said to someone, I think it was when we played Brentford, talking to the Brentford team about the fact that it's kind of shocking at points, because we've got like 3 Brazilian internationals at points in the starting lineup, and some amazing players that if you just look at them independently, it's like this should not physically be where it is, and it's just not quite gelling. Some of it is shooting ourselves in the foot, just literally giving the ball to the opposition in really ridiculous places, or giving away stupid penalties and all that kind of stuff. But Finn already mentioned a little bit about what they see from the outside. But Joe, what's your perception of Wolves at the moment coming into this weekend?
I think both, Wolves and Palace and every team that is languishing down the bottom of every table in the world, I suppose, have the same problem, that they're much worse at defending than attacking. But with Wolves, it's more a case of attacking pretty good. I think they could stand to hurt any team in the league. Certainly Palace, 13 goals or something at this stage is solid. And as you say, so much talent in the squad, with likes of Cunha and even the players who maybe haven't clicked as much, but the likes of Guedes and Sarabia have played at the kind of top level of European football. I mean, they're no mugs. And yeah, I think I just see it as kind of chaos. And whenever I watch Wolves, I kind of think it's entertaining, it's direct, it's fast paced, but they look vulnerable. And like that equaliser epitomised that at last weekend. It should not have been 4v1, that situation. It worked out well. Fair play to Tommy Doyle. But yeah, I think of Wolves as kind of entertaining chaos, but yeah, vulnerable, could hurt you. Main thing I'm thinking about Wolves at the moment is I can't believe Ruben Amorim's ended up at United, not Wolves. He feels like the most Wolves manager you could possibly design. But yeah, broadly that's how I feel.
Nathan, what do you make of all that?
Yeah, I guess this Amorim guy would need a bit of a shaved head, wouldn't he, to be more like a Nuno-esque, or like a Walter Zenga if we're going to roll it back a few years. It's true what you're saying, Joe. Like watching Wolves games this season, it's been painful as a Wolves fan. It just feels like goals could go in either end at any time, and so far this season it's been mostly in our own net, and we do seem to score consistently, but it always seems to be less than the opposition, which given that the aim of the game is not to concede and score in the opposition's net, it ain't great. So yeah, I think we've got a long way to go performance wise, and I guess the result of the weekend, you're saying like a good draw away to Brighton. We're hoping, and we've been talking about it being potentially a turning point in our season. So we're really hoping that's the case, and hoping that the lads have kind of got a bit of confidence from that fight back and can bring it into the weekend's game, hosting you guys. So,
yeah, because at times there's been some silly mistakes, but there's also been some crushing bad luck as well at points, and even though we drew, there's always that element of when you get a comeback so late in a game from 2-0 down in the bizarre circumstances that we had it, the feeling that hopefully that momentum can spur them on and feel like maybe some of the bad luck has shifted a little bit, because the final goal, for example, gets a slight nick off the defender and goes in off the bar, when the week before that would have gone rocketing over into the stand somewhere. That's just how it's been all season long. So that's the desperation we're at, is hoping that's the the signifier, the spark behind it all. But in Finn, who do we need to be worried about? Do you reckon who the Wolves need to be worried about in terms of when you guys come to us this weekend? Who's going to be the strong person that's going to stand out for you guys?
Yeah. So I mean, he's had a bit of a tough start to the season, and it's really sort of part of this turnaround this week. Really, has been the form of this player. But Eberichi Eze, I think he's going to be really pivotal when he plays well. I think Palace play well, and I think the team really sort of channels itself through him. He sort of is very good at taking the ball in the center of the pitch and then and moving it forward and bringing it up. And I think he's been really unlucky in terms of his finishing so far this year. He's had like some potential like goals of the season ruled out and had loads of like shots from outside the box, which have produced like world-class saves from keepers and stuff. So it will be interesting to see. Obviously, Sam Johnston joined you guys in the summer, and it will be interesting to see if, in terms of the lineup for Wolves, if they go for Jose Sarr or Sam Johnston in goal. Just because I think Jose Sarr is a very good keeper as well, but obviously at the weekend, it's sort of one of Brighton's goals was from his distribution. So it would be interesting to see if they go for Jose Sarr or Sam Johnston in goal. In terms of Palace players to sort of really threaten as well, we had a cup game last night against Aston Villa, and one of the main reasons we won that game was Daniel Munoz on the right hand side. Again, he's had a fairly slow start to the season, but within the last couple of fixtures, he's really sort of come back into good form. And I mean, the guy just doesn't stop running. It's kind of, it's kind of astounding. Like he just bombs it up and down that right hand side. And I know both teams like to set up in a pretty similar formation. They like to have three at the back with wing backs and then quite a few midfielders and then usually a target man up top. It'd be interesting to see if both teams keep that formation for this game. I imagine they probably will, to try and sort of cancel each other's out in terms of certain areas of the pitch. But yeah, I would say definitely so. Eberichi Eze, Daniel Munoz, and yeah, Jean-Philippe Mateta, the big man himself, Joe's favorite guy in the world. Joe's planning on getting a Jean-Philippe Mateta back tattoo, I believe. He doesn't know this yet, but
absolutely.
But yeah, I think when he's on form, he can be really like a real handful for defenders, and he sort of likes to get himself about on the pitch and be a real nuisance, which I think is always a great attribute for a striker. Yeah, so that's in terms of Palace players.
Yeah, there's loads to touch on there, and I can see for all the listeners out there, Joe was happily nodding along to so much of that, and Nathan, I know like you've probably got massive thoughts on the mention of Johnston and the formation. Before we get to that, I will just take an opportunity to remind everyone that here at Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner with 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs. It's super easy, or not as easy as for me to speak, clearly, to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. So first off, as your guests, I'll jump to Joe and say, Joe, you were nodding along, so I take it you agree pretty much with everything that Finn mentioned there?
Pretty much, yeah. I think the as you say, the formations will be an interesting factor. Eze's been until probably that League Cup game with Villa. So I'd say even including the win over Spurs last weekend, he's been the absolute creative outlet for the whole team to a worrying extent, really. And he did come off early in that Villa game, and that's a big concern for Palace. I think we don't really know the prognosis on that yet. But that last game, a bit more. There were a few more avenues to creating something. Daniel Munoz, as Finn suggests, is probably about the next most creative player in the Palace team on form. One thing I think will be a fairly decisive battle in in the game this weekend is probably Munoz up against Aït-Nouri on there, because he always strikes me as one of Wolves' most creative best players. They'll be up against probably like for like wing back roles, or maybe you're going to tell me otherwise. And I think it'll be interesting to see if they kind of follow each other around the pitch and neutralize each other, or if they sort of leave each other be, and that could make that kind of whole side of the pitch really chaotic, entertaining outlets for both sides. Because I feel like I don't have anything to really back this up, but Aït-Nouri strikes me as a fullback who I feel like just on match of the day, I see him wandering inside the pitch quite a lot, kind of coming in, getting towards the edge of the box, not really holding the width. Whereas Munoz out there really likes to just hug that touchline. So if they kind of let each other go, I think there could be a lot of open space there. That could be a really interesting battle and could prove decisive in the game.
Wow. Yeah. Again, there's so many thoughts. What's interesting about Ryan Aït-Nouri is that when he's in a wing back, he's arguably a slightly better defender than he is in a back four, because he's used to that formation. I feel like he owned under Nuno and everything. He's established in that. He knows that inside out. He had at least 2 games against Liverpool at home where he's basically marked Mohamed Salah out the game for pretty much the entire game. And when he came off injured, Aït-Nouri, that was when we conceded from Salah, because he was free of Aït-Nouri in that game. But in the back four, he's completely. That's why we conceded so many against Chelsea. The ones where he went missing in that game at left back, it's 3 of the Chelsea goals are literally a replica of each other. It looks like the same goal 3 times, and it's all because he was not there. He was somewhere in the midfield, just going for a walk in a back four. Nathan, what do you make of all that? Because I've got my thoughts pinging around my head on the formation stuff. Do you agree with? Firstly, with what I mentioned.
I agree with what you mentioned. I mean, Aït-Nouri is brilliant going forwards, and he's got this like creative talent that you don't see very often in fullbacks. I mean, he can just come up with stuff that's just unbelievable. But then at the same time, he can be a bit of like, there's a maverick attitude to what he does, where sometimes he's just not in position. And as Chris was saying, we concede, 4 within the space of, 15, 20 minutes, or 3 within 15, 20 minutes. It was insane. So it would definitely be an interesting battle. But I think on the formation one, we've spoken at length on our podcast about wanting to, have that 5 at the back to be solid, because this season we've conceded so many goals. We want to have a 5, and the difficulty that Gary O'Neill has there is that we've only got 3 fit senior centre halves at the minute, which is again down to sort of summer recruitment and an injury with Mosquera being out for the season now. So it will be interesting to see how those formations match up. And if they do, which I would tend to agree, I think it will be sort of like for like. Chris is shaking his head for the listeners out there. He doesn't believe it will be.
No, we'll come on to that.
I think another battle around the pitch that would be really interesting is sort of the supply to Eze for Palace. It tends to always come through Wharton, who is unbelievable on the ball and unbelievable at that transition from sort of playing out from the back and getting it up to your creative players. And I'd see that Cunha against Wharton as quite an important battle in the sort of middle, sort of advanced part of the park, where Cunha is so good at running at players and potentially could cause Wharton some issues with that, but at the same time isn't as good defensively, so might not be able to cut off some of the supply that Wharton gives. But that's enough waffle from me. Chris was shaking his head severely at the idea.
Vehemently, because so Gary O'Neill did pre-season completely in a back 4. Then most of the first part of the season has been as a back 4, conceding all the goals, but attacking, as you said, we've scored in every game, even when we're losing, we're still scoring goals. I mean, sometimes we've scored, what was it, like the one time, like 3 away from home, and we still lost. That just shows that it's ridiculous. But and then when his job is at risk and we come up against Manchester City, obviously doesn't want to get caned, so he switches to the back 5 because it's Man City. We do okay even in the loss, so keeps the back 5 away to Brighton, but then switches at half time to the back 4, and we go on and equalise and make it 2-2 in the dying moments, and looked a lot more dynamic in the second half because we've got the extra attacking players on. And then one of the first things, and I mentioned this earlier in the week, one of the first things he mentions in the press conference afterwards is that he regretted not going with the back four from the start. That was one of the first comments that he made, was not going with his gut and going with the back four from the start. So I think he will, having got the equaliser against Brighton, but going back to his beloved back four, I think he will, at home, wanting the win against Palace, he'll want to go gung-ho, and he will want to go immediately back to that formation. I think it's set in, count it now, it's set in the stars. And also, I'm curious, Joe and Finn, what you guys make of Johnston, because there's been a lot of discussion, you mentioned him earlier, about him coming to Wolves. Now, I would say the majority of Wolves fans, based on, the discussion that goes on social media and at the stands and everything, is that most people here feel that he is not an upgrade on Jose Sarr. He's actually at the maximum on a similar level, but many people are saying that Jose Sarr is still a better goalkeeper. And the main reason Johnston was brought in is it was expected that Jose Sarr would go in the transfer window. And when his transfer fell through, we suddenly got left with two like Premier League level goalkeepers. So, and the only reason that Sarr came back in is because Johnston picked up a slight injury, and it gave Sarr his chance, but he did amazingly against Man City, got a Man of the Match award, so had to stay in against Brighton while Johnston's still recovering. But there's, again, more speculation that the moment he's fit, Johnston will be back in the starting lineup, even though the fans want Sarr, because Johnston was signed as the new first team keeper, and that's who Gary Neal wants. So I'm curious how you guys see, if I could start with you, Joe, in terms of how you would compare them, like, and how you rate Johnston.
Johnston, much like, it's kind of a toss-up with Johnston, Dean Henderson at Palace. I remember saying at the start of the season, it's kind of, like choosing between Hovis and Warburtons. They sort of both do the job, but they're not really kind of, there's no remarkably good or bad element of either their games. Decent shot stoppers, fine with their feet, reasonably consistent. I think Sam Johnston's like, he's a John Ruddy regen, really. He'll be absolutely fine. He's reliable. I suspect he might be more consistent than Jose Sarr, but it's easier to be consistent when your top level is not that impressive. And Sarr, at his best, is clearly a really acrobatic top level shot stopper who, in a good run of form, could win you some points with some incredible saves. Equally, I suspect this might not be fair, that in a bad run of form, he could lose you quite a lot of points with some erratic displays. So, I think it's probably not bad. He's definitely a really good fullback option. Like, as you say, he's an unremarkable Prem level goalkeeper, Sam Johnston. But I wouldn't be, I wouldn't be eager to move Jose Sarr on or force him out of the team to accommodate Johnston, certainly.
So you're saying if you had the choice, who would start? Like if you were the Wolves manager and you had to start, if they're both fit, Sarr or Johnston against Palace, who are you starting?
I'd look into Sarr's eyes before the game and say, am I getting the world-class shot stopper or the madman? And I'd make a call from then. I'd be rotating every week, playing with their heads, destroying their confidence.
What about you, Finn? Who are you picking?
I think goalkeepers, obviously, it's one of the tougher gigs in football, because obviously there is only one position on the pitch, and it's the most competitive, and it's very easy, it's a very fickle position. It's very easy to you can play 99% of a game fantastically well and make one mistake and then you're dropped. I think Sam Johnston is a really, really good keeper. I think a bit like, one of the reasons he left Palace was because he just couldn't unseat Dean Henderson, who's been really good for us since he arrived from Man United. I feel like he probably is up for he's up for the battle of trying to get that jersey each week with Jose Sarr. And I think for any team, it's actually really good to have that competitive element across the pitch for all your positions. You want at least 2 or 3 players sort of competing for a spot on the team sheet, and because complacency is the worst, I would say, especially for us teams in the lower part of the table for the moment, where you want people who are really going to sort of fight for their place and And yeah, I just think they're two quite, as we've sort of, as Joe's alluded to and you said as well, like they're two different keepers in sense of style. Like one is very much a shot stopper in Jose Sarr, whereas Sam Johnson is sort of more of a traditional sort of run of the mill goalkeeper. And yeah, I think for particularly against Palace, because just because I've said we've seemed to be doing quite a lot of long shots from outside of the box and seeing, and I think that's something Oliver Glasner has told the players to do specifically, because I think we've been quite toothless at the beginning of the season and haven't been converting enough chances. So I think he's been telling players to take more long shots and long chances. So maybe in this instance, Jose Sarr would be a better option, just because I could just see, for example, Eberechi Eze trying a cheeky little dink from outside of the box, try and catch him off his line. And I think Jose Sarr would probably be better equipped than Sam Johnston. But yeah, but I think it's always good to have a bit of competition, especially with keepers. And I'm trying to think, I don't even know. We've got Matt Turner. That's it. We've got Matt Turner on loan from Nottingham Forest, who apparently did quite well last night against Aston Villa in the cup. But Joe's going, yeah.
I did what you should have saved. It should have been 2-0 Palace. Is all I'll say about Matt Turner's performance. He did do some things well.
But yeah,
I think it was I just thought it was interesting to get the viewpoint of having a player that's crossed the into the Midlands, come back to the Midlands to see what you guys think. Nathan, I'm going to jump to you and say, before we go in like any more detail on any of the stuff for the game itself, well, I mean, in terms of results and everything else like that, but who are you most worried about in terms of Palace?
I think the obvious one is you're going to say Eze.
Mm-hmm.
I think all the noise around him last season with the form that Palace were in, and the link up that he had with obviously last season Elise and Mateta was a scary prospect. And I think that when he's in full flow and on his game, I think he's going to trouble any team in the world, really. But there are games where it can kind of pass him by. And so far this season, we've seen that a couple of times. And I think he's similar to Cunha in that respect, where he can really have that sort of like binary impact on your team. It's all positive and he kind of lifts everyone around him. But then at the same time, if he kind of has a passive game, then everyone around him might have a little bit of a lower level performance. So yeah, I'd say Eze overall is the one that I'd be mainly worried about. But I'm quietly confident that our midfield three would be able to contain him, just because if they had to pick another midfielder to go against, I think Eze might be one of them, in a sense that they've got similar builds, and I think the three of them could nullify him. Now, I don't want to shoot myself in the foot here, so I am touching wood. But yeah, let's see.
Because plus, is that a midfield three with a back four? What are you saying there? Because that's are you saying it's a back five?
I think Gary O'Neill will go over back four. That's what I think he's going to go with.
Okay. All right. Okay. Cool. And Joe, in terms of Wolves players, who are you most worried about from our side?
Yeah, Cunha's the big one, I think. Particularly as in Palace's formation, I think we can be more sure Oliver Glasner does not love a back four. He loves a 3-4-3 specifically. And so that's how Palace will line up. Quite often, sort of the way they press is the midfield four almost as a line push up really high. And it can be really effective and suffocating. And it's worked really well in the last two games. But what we're seeing until that point this season is if it's a bit uncoordinated and wholly and you can pick your way through it, it leaves this huge hole for players in those sort of attacking midfield roles to just drive at the back three almost unprotected, basically. And I think Cunha is a player in that space who clearly does that really well, despite not really being a massively strong or fast player. He seems to have a good instinct for kind of space on the counter attack, like a bit reminiscent of an Ozil or something in that way. I think he could really hurt Palace if he's got some good runs off him carrying the ball through there. I think, yeah, he's he's the big danger. I should say, to allay some of your fears on the Palace side as well. Like it's every chance he doesn't play. I don't think Glasser's given us a proper update on his fitness after that Villa game as well. So I think it's that would definitely put your minds at rest a little bit.
Nathan's crossing his fingers there. I have to say I'm doing the same. And Finn, is there any other players that you're worried about from the Wolves side besides Cunha?
I mean, you guys have already mentioned them as well. Also, I have
lost you
in my fantasy team. But Ryan at Nori,
I think we might have lost Finn.
Oh, can you hear me?
For the moment. What I will say is, in terms of, in the meantime, Nathan, I don't know if you're aware, because we're going into this run, Joe, of games into November, where it's like do or die for us, because we're playing that. You guys were playing the likes of Southampton, Bournemouth. We're playing. Yeah,
Opta have called it the easiest. They've decided their fixture ticker has Wolves as the easiest run for next 8 games.
Well, it had to be. We've had the toughest run for the start of the season. There's no one left.
Yeah, worrying thing for Palace is they've had quite an easy run and got 6 points out of it, and now they've got the third toughest on the same metric, I think. So they'll be really eager.
But where I was going with that, specifically for Nathan as well to be aware of, is that going into this Palace game, bearing in mind all the games we've got immediately after, we've got Nelson Semedo, João Gomez, and Totti all on 4 yellows. So, like, if they pick up bans like yellow cards in this first game this weekend, then for this run of games, or anywhere in that period for this run of games, we're going to lose some key players when we most need them. Just making you aware, Nathan, if you weren't aware, and everyone else out there. Do or die.
Thanks for letting me know. That's brought a thought into my head of Totti Gomez tripping someone up on the halfway line within the first 5 minutes.
Yeah,
and it's not a thought I wanted, but cheers for that, Chris.
You're welcome. Finn, welcome back. I think we lost you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, sorry about that. Don't know where I wandered off to.
So, if you can hear me, before we move on to outcomes, I was just asking if you had anyone else you were concerned about from a Wolves side besides Cunha, or is it just all about Cunha in the Palace dugout?
No, I mean, I was saying before you guys mentioned him. I think Ryan Aït-Nouri is a really good player and will be really pivotal, I think, in terms of Wolves' performance on Saturday. I also have him in my fantasy team, rather selfishly. So, but I think he not only is he like very sound defensively, I think he offers that attacking option for Wolves, which is really good in terms of on the left hand side he can cut in, and obviously he scored in the previous fixture. Another player to think of. I mean, we've mentioned Cunha and stuff. I mean, I'm curious because I haven't seen him much, because I saw him playing last year for Celta Vigo. I wanted to ask you guys very quickly, Jürgen Strand Larsen, what has he been doing for you? Because I remember seeing him last year for Celta Vigo when I was living in Spain, and he played against Barcelona and he ran the show against them. He's like for a young guy, he's like very domineering up front, and I thought he's an excellent sort of target man. And what I just wanted to, I haven't seen him playing much just because I haven't watched all of Wolves games this year, but I just wanted to ask you, how has he been so far since he's arrived?
Yeah,
Nathan's nodding. Do you want to take that, Nathan?
Sure. He's a beautiful, beautiful man. That's what he is. I think he embodies what we've been looking for in a striker since Raul Jimenez sort of had his head injury, and then we've never really been able to replace him in that sense. A different type of striker. I think he has the potential to become like Mateta at the end of last year, when he was just scoring goals for fun and being a nuisance, and that sort of target man who can really create a lot of issues for defensives just through pure physicality, but also all the link-up play. Strand Larsen so far this season has had a tough gig because often he's up there on his own, having to do a lot of pressing against teams, and often most of his touches on the ball are from kickoff. So actually, when he's had the chances, he's been putting away the goals, and he always seems to be on the end of things when there are crosses into the box, which doesn't happen very often. So yeah, I rate him quite highly, and I hope that he can kick on, because he is young, as you were saying, Finn, and I think he's got huge potential. So hopefully we can keep providing with opportunities to finish off those chances.
Yeah, he's. I love him. He's already got a couple of assists because he does look. He also looks up. He's not just selfish. He looks for his teammates if if he's out wide, and he seems really good at getting in front of his man. Like Nathan said, when crosses do come in, even if it's just half of him or it's just his head, he somehow manages to get part of himself around the last man every time, or his shoulder or whatever it comes off. He didn't score against. Who did we play early on? Was it Arsenal?
Arsenal
away,
that header,
when
Raya
diving
pulled off
header,
an unbelievable
yeah,
save.
beautiful diving header that Raya did a one of the saves of the day, saves of the weekend, one-handed diving save. Anyone else that probably would have gone in, and it was a glorious diving header, and that is the kind of thing that Nathan mentioned we used to see Jimenez doing. These beautiful runs into the box and some great headers, but he looks lively and I like him, and he's strong, and he's, for a big man, he's also got a little bit of pace and he holds people off the ball well. So yeah, I really like him so far. All right. We've discussed an awful lot, and so I guess we should start to get on to what we all think how it's all going to end this weekend. And being a polite person, I should let our guests have the first word on this, I suppose. So let's go Finn first. What do you see as being the result this weekend?
I'm going to go for an optimistic 2-0 to Crystal Palace. I feel like, and I reckon Daichi Kamada, just because he got a goal for us last night in the cup, I reckon he might be involved in one of those goals. That's my prediction, 2-0 Palace.
Wow. Joe, you winced and then you nodded. I'm not sure what you made of that.
I'm manifesting it a camera ago. I agree with half the scoreline. I'm thinking it's a ding-dong 2-2. I reckon both teams have had a big shot in the arm last weekend. They're going to come out fired up. I think Palace can hurt that Wolves backline by pressing high, and equally, I think Wolves can hurt Palace by sort of breaking quickly, and I have got sort of one of the most counter-attack goals in the league this season, clearly part of the Arsenal. So I think both of them will cause each other problems, and it'll be a really exciting first half, and then they'll both settle and go, oh, actually, this is a 6-pointer. We don't want to lose this, and settle for a 2-2. So I think that's how it's going to go.
Yeah, I can see that. There's a part of me that can really see it being some kind of draw. I hate to say it, but Nathan, go on.
I'm going for 1-0 Wolves win, and I'm hoping it's the most boring game I ever watch. And I'm predicting that in the spirit of this week, I think Ballon Dawson's going to score a header from a corner. That's it.
Wow. Yeah, I'm slightly torn myself. There's a part of me that I think it's going to go one of two ways. It'll either be a really boring kind of ground out 0-0, which actually three. I'm really bad at making decisions. So we have a terrible record against Palace. So I hate to say it could all go the wrong way for Wolves, because we do have. I feel like over recent years we don't have a great record against you guys. I haven't actually statistically checked that. Bad host, but I feel like that's what it is. But I do think there's goals in this game, because I think especially if we go with the back four that Gary O'Neill loves so much, I don't think we'll be able to necessarily cling on to a clean sheet. But likewise, like I said, we've scored in pretty much every game, I think. So I see it being a goal fest of some kind. So I can almost go along with Joe's 2-2. In a dream world, it'll be a 3-2 to Wolves, because like I say, it'll be a goal fest. But otherwise, I see it going Joe's way, 2-2. As much as Wolves desperately need the points, I can see it. I can see it in the stars. So many things I've seen in the stars today. All right. Before we farewell, Joe, was there anything else you wanted to mention to the either Palace or the Wolves fans, or anything going into this weekend?
There are more important things in life than football. Bad message for a daily football podcast, but don't let it get you down. Take your vitamin D. It's a long winter, so don't put too much emphasis on this.
Nice. I like it. Finn, any more positive words?
Yeah, I'm loving the Han Solo behind you. I'm a big fan of Star Wars, and I've just noticed that you have the Han Solo. Is it in carbonite? Is that it in Star Wars? Again, so totally
So
unfootball
for
related, but so that's something for listeners
sorry,
to
yeah.
imagine.
Yeah, for audio listeners out there, I don't think we've ever mentioned it before on the feed. I'm not sure, but I have a little geek den behind me. So yeah, there's a Han Solo and carbonite behind me. But was there any other messages for the fans out there, Finn, or, other than my lovely geek nostalgia?
Yeah, if you love teams that are terrible at defending but love scoring goals and doing mad attacking football, watch Crystal Palace or Wolverhampton Wanderers, and you'll get all you need from both those teams.
Yeah, I like that too. Nathan, final words.
I'm just going to be thinking about whether Hovis or Warburtons are better, to be honest, for the next few days.
Love it. Well, as always, everyone, I have to bow out with the motto of our beloved city of Wolverhampton and that of the Wolves team itself. Just remember, even in these times of languishing in the bottom of the division, that out of darkness cometh light. Farewell, everyone, and take care.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.